So Douglas Murray has reported how the family of an American hostage still in Gaza, the Neutra family, are shocked at the anti-Semitism that they're experiencing in New York. Okay, this is a picture of Douglas with Orna and Ronen Neutra, the parents of Israeli-American hostage Omer Neutra, who is still in Gaza. And he writes in the New York Post about how they're experiencing anti-Semitism at their time of extreme anguish in New York itself. This is what he wrote in the New York Post. This is what Douglas wrote. There are plenty of bad things happening in Kathy Hochul's New York. She's the governor, I believe. But one thing that has become increasingly clear is how willing Hochul is to allow racism and bigotry to thrive in this city. Last weekend, the terrible news came through that another American citizen has been murdered by Hamas. California-born Hirsch Goldberg Polin was held hostage in Gaza for almost a year, kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival in Israel on October 7th. Last week, as the IDF moved in to save him, Hamas executed Hirsch and 5 other hostages. A day after this news broke, there was a huge pro-Hamas protest in New York. A bunch of sick, keffiyeh-wearing psychos, banging drums and chanting, marched through the centre of New York waving the Hamas flag. The main flag wavers all covered their faces, of course. It seems in Hochul's New York you can openly praise a designated terrorist group that just murdered an American. Jewish New Yorkers have had to put up with a year of this. They've had to put up with routine intimidation, with anti-Jewish graffiti going up calling for the murder of Jews, and for posters of the hostages being ripped down wherever they are put up. And I'm sure you may have seen plenty of footage of this happening, not just in New York, but in plenty of Western cities and towns. Then on Tuesday, things moved to their next stage as Jewish students from CUNY's City College got barricaded into a Jewish deli on Broadway. A group of racists from Students for Justice in Palestine and other hate groups screamed abuse at the Jewish students. Go back to Brooklyn was just one of the things these keffiyeh-wearing thugs shouted. Again, it seems this is all acceptable. Yesterday, I sat down with a couple of other New Yorkers, Ronen and Orna Neutra, the parents of Omer Neutra, only 23 years old. Omer was born in New York and raised in Queens and Long Island. Like a lot of American Jews, he visited Israel in his gap year. His grandparents are both Holocaust survivors, and in Israel he realised the truth that many Jews realise, which is that the world's only Jewish state needs to defend itself. He decided he wants to do his part and join the IDF. And let me just get you a picture up of him so you can see for yourself. So in this picture, Omer, this is him at his high school graduation with his parents and brother Daniel. He'd almost finished his 3 years and was meant to start at Binghamton University, New York this year, but he missed his enrollment because last October, Hamas kidnapped him from near the Gaza border and dragged him into Gaza, and there's been no word of him ever since. It's just utterly painful. Utterly, utterly painful. You know, Hirsch is someone we all heard about, but there's so many Hirsches. He's one of several American hostages still being held in Gaza. They include 64-year-old Keith Samuel Sagel from North Carolina and 20-year-old Idan Alexander from New Jersey. You might wonder why we've not heard about these kidnapped Americans. The Biden-Harris administration said they're doing everything they can to return them. But the silence is deafening. Yesterday, Omer's mother said to me, on October 7th, not only 1,200 Israelis were murdered and slaughtered and raped, but also 45 Americans. And 12 Americans were taken hostage. We don't feel that the outcry is there. We don't feel that there is a sense of outrage. But why the lack of outrage about these kidnapped and murdered Americans? Omer's mother again. I think a lot of propaganda out there that's twisting the events and telling the story all upside down. There's lack of knowledge and a lot of people are just buying it. Orna was 8 months pregnant with Omer when 9/11 happened. She was working in the city that day. There was no transportation that day, she said. We lived in Queens and I just remember getting to work and the news was out. I just remember thinking, how am I getting home and making sure that my child is safe? 23 years later, I can't save him. Ronen finishes her thought. We clearly remember all the pictures around New York City of missing people. It's just unimaginable how 23 years later, we're in that spot. They show me photos of Omer, the all-American boy, and here's another picture of him. This is him with his high school volleyball team. He's on the floor in the number 9 shirt. There's a photograph of him with his Long Island school's volleyball team. He was the captain. Ronen and Orna, who own a small business, learned about their son's kidnapping while they were at home in New York. Just unbelievable. From that moment, they had been in a hell no parent can imagine. How do they feel that in their own city, people have just this week been flying the flag of Hamas, the flag of the designated terrorist group, who have held their son kidnapped for almost a year? We think they don't know what they're talking about, says Orna. I think they are opportunists that are taking advantage of people who just don't know. There's also a purposeful manipulation going on. That is also clear. You have professors in universities that are propagating this propaganda. It's so dangerous. It's scary. It's dangerous for the whole Western world. New York is now a city where anti-Semitism is open and apparently tolerated. Early this year, when there was a commemoration of the young people murdered and kidnapped at the Nova Festival, like Hirsch, a gang of Hamas supporters protested outside. Did Ronen and Orna ever imagine this would happen in their city, the city in which they live? With the look of deepest sadness, Orna says, the city has changed so much. I think it's been building up. I think anti-Semitism has been on the rise. I think people have been crying out for a few years now. How on earth do they keep hope alive when there is all this hate? Omer's mother tells me, a few days before Omer was taken captive, he had some time off and he spent some time with a good friend. And she reached out to us a short time after he was taken captive and she told us, we were just sitting on the beach and we were talking about plans for the future. And somehow we got to speak about our families. And he told me that he knew if anything happened to him that his parents would fight for him. Wow. And we've been charged with that, she says. We have to. We have to keep up hope. And we have to keep on fighting. Every decent American should be fighting alongside them. The pain is so great of what Hamas did and are doing right now. And the fact that they murdered 6 more hostages as it seemed the IDF were closing in on them is just further evidence of their sheer evil, their sheer determination to use the hostage crisis to divide people, to stoke up hatred. But we're not going to let that happen. In the words of Orna, they're counting on us to stand strong in the face of all this hate. We wish Israel every success in the world in utterly defeating Hamas and through their own military might and strength reclaiming the hostages. And I will end this video just with a prayer that God protect all the hostages from mutilation, rape, abuse, pain, suffering, injury, and death, and that they all be restored immediately back into Israel, back to their families, and that Israel be returned as swiftly as possible to security and peace.
Thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.